What's up, and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Monday, April 10th. Frank Stampfl joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, we're going to recap all of this weekend's action and the unfortunate news. Oneil Cruz has a fractured ankle, so we'll get to that and give you some replacements through the waiver wire, or maybe go out and make a trade in your league. Before we get going, make sure to like this video and subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. And if you're listening on the audio side, make sure to download, follow, and leave a 5-star rating. It really does help, and we appreciate it. Happy Easter to those who celebrate. Scott, I assume that you are just filled to the brim with peeps right now.
I have not eaten a single peep today. As a matter of fact, as I say often when the peeps conversation is initiated, I don't actually eat all that many peeps. But I hope some of you listening did get a chance to sample, and maybe that bite persuaded you. You know what? This isn't quite as vile as randos on the internet told me it was.
No peeps for me yet. I say yet because my parents gave me this huge Easter basket filled with candy and stuff. It's cute. I appreciate that they do it. You still do things as if I was like 10 years old, and it's great. But at the same time, I haven't actually opened up the basket yet, so there might be peeps inside. I don't know.
They want grandbabies to do that with, Frank. That's what they're telling you.
I've got a cat. That's about as far as it goes. Let's get into this weekend's action, and we'll start off with an oh my goodness gracious player from the weekend.
In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
And of course, that is the famous Vin Scully's call on the Kirk Gibson home run. And Scott, we will start with you. We got
with me? Okay. So I am going with Chris Bubic today. And let's just start with what Chris Bubic did here on Easter Sunday. At San Francisco, no runs in 6 innings, 2 hits, no walks, 9 strikeouts. On just 76 pitches, he had 19 whiffs, 7 on the fastball, 5 on the changeup, 5 on the curveball. Looked pretty much amazing, unlike we've ever seen Chris Bubic look before. And I'm going to do something now that I don't do very often. I am going to promote someone else. For my whole all shucks attitude and everything, I'm actually like Ash Ketchum. I want to be the very best. And so I don't often promote other people because I just want you to look at my stuff and just like all the love for me. But I am going to promote a guy named Lance Brozdowski, who I've known for a while.
Does great work.
I've played in a few fantasy leagues with him over the years. And kind of when he was just starting out, getting his foot in the fantasy baseball industry. But he's a genius, basically. I think you should follow him on Twitter because this was an act of genius what Lance Brozdowski did, because he called this for Chris Bubic after his first start, which was nothing exceptional. It was, it wasn't terrible. It was okay. But I saw this tweet of his afterward, and I'm like, it stuck out in my mind because like when's the last time somebody's been excited for Chris Bubic? It's probably been like 3 or 4 years. But he wrote on April 5th, Lance Brozdowski again, Royals Chris Bubic looks like an entirely new pitcher. His velocity is up about 2 miles per hour across the board. His extension is also up 6 inches, and it's lowered his release height by 2 to 3 inches. He talked about how the 4-seamer isn't sinking as much. It has kind of that rising action now because of the lowered arm angle. He talked about how he has a new slider that earns a really high rating for Stuff Plus. He talked about how his changeup also it's also improved. It's getting more separation with the 4-seamer, and just raved about Chris Bubic. And it was part of like a larger. It looks like he copied like a notepad with the notes on like 4 or 5 different pitchers, and he's been sending out these notes every night. He did some work with Driveline Baseball in the past, so he seems to have a lot of access to information that the rest of us don't. I know the way he pointed out that the way he measures like vertical movement is different from what you see on StatCast. So like he just has access to information the rest of us don't. So like, and then Chris Bubic goes out and has this amazing start. And so first of all, like props to Lance Brozdowski. I am going to be all over these notes the rest of the season. I'm probably going to be referring to him a lot if he keeps having success with these calls, because clearly he's like I said, he has access to something the rest of us don't, and seems to be making very good use of it. So I am all in on Chris Bubic now. Like I said, 19 whiffs on 76 pitches and at least 5 on 3 different pitches. And looks like one of the potential early breakout candidates off the waiver wire this year. There were a few good pitchers who stood out this weekend that I would like to add off the waiver wire, but Chris Bubic is at the top of the list.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to get to all those names. Chris Bubic, only 4% rostered in CBS leagues. He does go up against the Atlanta Braves this week. So the way that I have been approaching him so far is that if I win him or add him in leagues, I'm probably not starting him just because it's a really tough matchup against the Atlanta Braves. But the 2 leagues where my fab has already run, he went for 86 out of 1,000 and 37. So somewhere between 3 and 8%. Scott, you won him in Tout Wars, right? How much did you win him for?
So that was only 12. And Tout Wars goes, Tout Wars waivers runs a couple hours before the NFBC leagues. So I thought, okay, I'll go 25 in those NFBC leagues. And of course I didn't win him in those. I think the average person listening out there probably won't have to bid that much on him. That's out of $1,000, but if you go 4 or 5 in your league, you're probably going to win him. If your waivers run daily, you might be able to get away with going 1 or 2. But the point is, he's a very obscure name with a very lackluster history. And so not that many people are going to be on him. But Lance Brozdowski has made a believer out of me.
All right, that is Chris Bubic, and we'll compare him to other waiver wire ads in just a bit. Chris, oh my goodness gracious for you.
Wander Franco, who we hoped would be a breakout candidate, and we kind of saw a little bit of it last April, and then he got hurt and was never quite the same. He may be breaking out. One thing that's interesting, he had 2 home runs this weekend. I think went 4 for 13 overall. Very good weekend. He's hitting the ball a lot harder overall, like on the whole. His hard hit rate's up to 40%, average exit velocity up to 90%. He's also hitting the ball in the air more, so his barrel rate is up to 20%. These are all very small sample size. We're talking about 30 batted balls or so in the early going, but he's managing all of this without striking out more than he typically does. We're talking about a 22-year-old who may be growing into his power, and that's an exciting thing to see, because this is a guy who, when he was a prospect, we thought could be as a prospect, he wasn't far off from a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. type. He didn't put up quite as impressive numbers in the minors as Vlad Jr., and he hasn't done it in the majors so far, but he's also, struggled to stay healthy and hasn't had consistent playing time as a result of that. But yeah, Wander Franco, 4 home runs in 9 games. Looks like he might be figuring it out.
And what I like so far too, Chris, is that 3 of his 4 home runs have come against right-handed pitching. He kind of has had weird splits so far in his career. Despite being a switch hitter, he's been much better against lefties than he has been against righties. So I do like that aspect. Just oozing swag too. Did you see the home run on Friday, the slow-mo of that, where he just like launches the bat? It was amazing. So love what we've seen from Wander Franco so far. You mentioned the fly ball rate is up to 50%. It's never been above 34% in any of his first 2 partial seasons. So something to watch moving forward, but yeah, that definitely could help fuel a breakout.
And one interesting thing, going back to spring, we were worried about that quad injury. Well, if you look at his sprint speed, it's down to 32nd percentile, which sounds really low, but he already has 2 steals. So I do think, it could be just a case where he's, kind of saving himself and picking his spots and, trying to stay healthy, but also, still being a contributor on the base paths. And, I don't think he's going to be a 30 steal guy or anything, but like if Wander Franco hits 20 homers and steals 10 bases, he's probably going to hit 300 and he's going to have a really nice season. And 20 homers certainly isn't the ceiling based on what we're seeing right now.
I don't think 10 steals is the ceiling either.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, look, if we're talking 95th percentile outcome, we could be talking about like a 30-20 season if everything goes right.
Yeah, 95th percentile outcome is he's competing for an MVP, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That is Wander Franco. Shout out to the Rays, by the way, 9-0, the final unbeaten team in baseball.
Have you seen the list? They have the third best run differential through 9 games in Major League history, and it's the 1884 Oklahoma Stock Barons and the 1876. It's just something that no team has done in literally 150 years.
I know
it's outrageous.
Their schedule has been very favorable.
It doesn't matter.
Far, but yeah, they have been.
Other teams have had easy schedules to start the season and haven't outscored. I think they're plus 56 through 9 games or something.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. Oh my goodness gracious for me. And I've got a group of pitchers that kind of look like they're breaking out and one that might be re-breaking out. And we'll get to those a little bit later on. But Sonny Gray is the one that I really wanted to highlight here. Going up against the Houston Astros this weekend. 7 innings of 1-run ball, 13 strikeouts, tied a career high to just 1 walk, 16 swinging strikes on 98 pitches. 8 of those coming on the slider, 6 on the curve, 2 on the sinker. And through 2 starts, he's moved away from his fastball, and he's made his curveball his most used pitch so far. He is throwing it 31.5% of the time. And there was a report before the season that Sonny Gray said last year, everything just kind of crept up on him the season because they were, they had the holdout, the lockout last year. And then he just didn't really get built up in time for the season. And so he felt like he was always behind. And as a result, he was battling injuries. And he said, he felt much better coming into the spring training. And so far, I mean, it's working out. We've seen enough of Sonny Gray that, maybe this is just an early season blip, but to do it against the Houston Astros, I know it's, not a complete Houston Astros team right now. It's pretty impressive stuff. So Sonny Gray looks awesome so far. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on his start this weekend.
He's definitely hard to buy into because even when things aren't going super great for Sonny Gray, he'll have stretches like this. So I think a healthy degree of skepticism is warranted, but he's worth adding where he's available. I'm sure it's not
that many. He was
I would assume he's 70 or 80%. But yeah, I feel good about what we've seen from him so far for sure.
So he hasn't really emphasized a slider much in the past. And what I thought was interesting about this, Art, and forgive me did you already say this, Frank?
I said that his curveball is his most used pitch so far this season.
Okay, so he used his curveball and slider a combined 57% of the time as compared to 35% last year. And like many pitchers, his fastball is the pitch that tends to get hit the hardest for him. And slider specifically wasn't one he used much in the past, like I said. So if he goes with this, if he continues with this heavy breaking ball approach, then maybe we will see a different version of Sonny Gray. But it's almost a punchline to say that because Sonny Gray, we've seen so many different versions of Sonny Gray already, and trying to get a read on him is he's been the most difficult pitcher to get a read on in my time covering fantasy baseball. So it's, if you got a really good offer for him this week, it'd probably be worth considering just given the unpredictability of it all. But there is that chance that maybe something new is going on.
I was going to say, if you could sell high on Sonny Gray right now and turn him into Lance Lynn or Chris Sale or Blake Snell, would you do that?
I might hesitate with Snell.
Okay.
Because he's a bit of a headache too.
I definitely am intrigued though. I mean, I watched the highlights of that start and man, those breaking pitches looked amazing. So maybe this is just, the best that Sonny Gray has felt in a long time. And as a result, might be re-breaking out here in fantasy baseball. Let's talk about some other waiver wire pitchers. You already mentioned Chris Bubic, Scott. Let's actually put your theory to the test. See if you would take him over all of these names.
That's what I said.
Oh, well, we're going to find out.
All right.
Justin Steele had another strong start this time up against the Rangers. 6 innings, 1 run, 3 strikeouts. In that one, he's up to 74% rostered. So really only available in shallower leagues, 10 or 12-team points leagues. He's at the Dodgers this week. Sean Manaea, very interesting. Had a great start against the Royals. 6 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts with 14 swinging strikes on 76 pitches. And he has changed his pitch mix, severely lowering his sinker usage, throwing more changeups and sliders. His sinker velocity is also up over 3 miles per hour compared to last year.
And the slider and sinker and slider both up 3 miles per hour.
Yeah, 62% roster to Sean Manaea. He is at the Tigers this week, so that is a great matchup. Mackenzie Gore looked great once again, and this time at Coors Field, 6 innings, 2 runs, 6 strikeouts in that one. And Michael Wacha. I mean, where did this come from at the Atlanta Braves? I'm so annoyed because in my most important league, I benched him for Kyle Finnegan. I feel like such a fool. Oh my God.
I mean, it was, you really can't blame yourself for that decision.
I know.
Wacha got crushed in his first start. He was going against Atlanta.
So annoying. But anywho, he looked great. 6 shutout with 10 strikeouts. That tied a career high for Michael Wacha. He had 16 swinging strikes, even with his fastball velocity actually being down in this start, 1.5 miles per hour compared to last year. Scott, how do you rank that group? Michael Wacha, Mackenzie Gore, Sean Manaea, Justin Steele, and would you actually take Bubic over all of them?
So it's interesting. There were a couple names you didn't say here.
Oh, don't worry. I've got names, Scott. I've got names.
Okay. So this is different tiers, I guess, of pickups because all of these guys are rostered more than Bubic right now, I would assume.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I take Bubic over all of them. The only one I'm not really interested in is Wacha.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since the velocity is down. I mean, it just seems like an isolated incident, which Wacha's had in the past. He's had his share of sporadic good starts in the past. And what is interesting for him is, in addition to his fastball being down 1.3, his changeup was down 3.1. And so I don't know if he's creating more separation. Like if that's an intentional thing, he's created more separation on those pitches because the changeup itself got 8 whiffs. So maybe there's something going on there, but as of now, not that interested in Wacha. Manaea, like obviously the jump in velocity is very exciting, but we knew about it going back to spring training, and he mostly got knocked around then. He got knocked around in his first appearance of the season, which was in long relief. Actually, it looks like he and Ross Stripling have switched roles already. Manaea joining the rotation, Stripling going to the bullpen, but the Giants have been pretty hush-hush about that.
Because I think the first time he pitched, didn't he piggyback DeSclafani? And that was what they were talking about, using them moving forward. And then DeSclafani was awesome in his first start, and I think that kind of changed the plan.
Yep.
And Stripling followed Manaea immediately after this, but after Manaea threw 6 innings. So Manaea's next start, presuming the Giants don't shake things up again, would be against the Tigers. And so you know, he's a pretty high priority pickup too. I think so. Wacha's definitely last of this group, but I'm having a hard time ranking the others. Steele walked 4 while striking out only 3 in this start. So we could quibble over how good of a start it actually was. 1 earned run in 6 innings, of course, is nice, but control issues are not. I'm gonna go that like the order they're listed here: Steele, Manaea, Gore is how much I want them in fantasy, but I would take Bubic over all 3.
Okay, let's move into waiver wire pitchers part 2. Next group includes Michael Kopech, who bounced back with a very good start at the Pirates. 6 innings, 1 run, 5 strikeouts to 3 walks. His fastball was actually up 1 mile per hour, as was his slider. Anthony DeSclafani had another great start, 6 1/3, 1 run, 7 strikeouts to 0 walks. He is 44% rostered, also at the Tigers this week. Seth Lugo, another strong start, this time against the Braves. 6 innings, 1 run, 5 strikeouts, 4 walks. That's a little high. They let him throw 109 pitches. I thought that was pretty surprising for Seth Lugo. They're just letting him go. SPARP eligible for those who are looking for a reliever. One that you could play there, that is Seth Lugo. And then Johnny Brito was great not great. He was fine for the Yankees at the Orioles. 5 innings, 1 run, 2 strikeouts there. 45% roster for him. Chris, how do you rank this group? Kopech, DeSclafani, Lugo, and Johnny Brito.
I think I could be talked into Kopech at the top just because I think there's some unrealized potential there, but I don't know. I find him pretty underwhelming at this point in his career. He's basically a 2-pitch pitcher. Slider has not been as effective as it was out of relief, but if you want to give him an edge over DeSclafani, I think that's fine. And then I would go Lugo and Brito in that order. And I think there's a bigger gap between Brito and the other three than there is between those three and any of them individually.
So Desclafani's another one I'm really excited about. Not as much as Bubic, but even in shallower head-to-head points leagues, I was putting in a claim for Desclafani. I just think he's back to 2021 form. That 2022 was a lost year. His ankle was never right, ended up getting shut down, having surgery. And in 2021, Anthony Desclafani, remind everybody of the numbers. He went 13-7 with a 3.17 ERA, 109 WHIP, 8.2 K per 9 for these same Giants. Looked great in spring trainings. Looked great now through 2 starts. I'm pretty much back in on him. By the way, somebody asked in the comments here, Kenta Maeda over all these guys, right? And yes, Kenta Maeda over all these guys. He's in line for 2 starts. I think there's a good chance he's back to 2020 form. And if he happens to be available in your league still, he would be
over
top
Bubic
priority, even over Bubic, yes. And if Sonny Gray happens to be out there, same for him over Bubic.
Mm-hmm. Sonny Gray is 83% rostered, so it would have to be, again, really shallow 10-team or maybe 12-team head-to-head points leagues. What about those in deeper leagues? Brad Keller was okay at the San Francisco Giants. I feel like he's doing some new things as well. I mean, it just kind of feels like the Royals have revamped their pitching staff and maybe some of their development there. But he went 5 2/3, 1 run, 3 strikeouts. He's throwing a new curveball 25% of the time, as well as a new sweeper that he's using at 10% of the time. Brad Keller also has SPARP eligibility. Marco Gonzalez, Cutter Crawford, Johan Oviedo. Oviedo was actually very good. And Zach Plesac. So those in deeper leagues. Got any, 2 or 3 names here that stand out to you in some of those deeper formats?
Actually, Johan Oviedo, I picked up prior to this week in Tout Wars. His first start was terrible, and I felt like an idiot. But then he had this great start against the White Sox, and I felt like a genius. So the slider is up over 3 miles per hour, and I noticed that was the case in spring training. I kind of made a note of that. When I saw he had 2 starts and I had a pitching spot to play with in Tout Wars, I was like, what the heck? It was getting a lot of swinging strikes in spring training. I got a lot of swinging strikes in this one, 18 swinging strikes on 89 pitches, 7 on that slider. But the curve and fastball each got 5 as well. So I don't have a lot more to say on Johan Oviedo than that. Obviously, he pitches for the Pirates, and that's not optimal. But if you play in a deeper league, he's relief pitcher eligible. I would say of this group, he's the most interesting. Cutter Crawford, I might have more interest in, except I would guess he's about to be kicked out with Garrett Whitlock coming back, right?
Yeah, I think Whitlock is supposed to return on Tuesday this week. So I guess I'm going to pull up the Red Sox rotation real quick to see if we're missing out on anyone else. Chris Sale, Corey Kluber, Tanner Houck. I guess there's a chance Houck could get kicked out he hasn't looked great so far.
It could be him instead. Yeah. I mean, but Crawford's, just he tends to get pretty good swinging strike numbers. That's really the only reason I have interest in him. The actual results haven't been very consistent or good. But I watch him closely every time he pitches.
If you need a streamer in a deep league, Marco Gonzalez faces the Rockies this week, and that's their first game outside of Coors Field. So it could be that hangover effect. So if you're just, again, it's a very deep league stream, but Marco Gonzalez up against the Rockies this week.
It's worth pointing out for the Red Sox that they do also have Brian Bayo,
right,
who I might be making his last rehab start, or they might have him make another one, and then James Paxton. James Paxton also is making rehab appearances now, so they might have some options that could make for some awkward decisions coming up.
All right, let's take our first break here, and when we get back, we'll talk about Oneil Cruz's unfortunate injury here on Fantasy Baseball Today.
Golf's biggest stars descend on Oak Hill for one unforgettable major, the PGA Championship, coming in May to CBS.
Welcome back into Fantasy Baseball Today. And ever dream about buying a Fantasy Baseball Today podcast shirt and then jumping over to get a Yellowstone whiskey glass or Top Gun Maverick hat? Well, now you can with the brand new Paramount Shop, which offers a mountain of merch from the Paramount shows and movies that you love. Shop official apparel, drinkware, and accessories inspired by over 150 fan favorite titles: Paw Patrol, Yellowstone, Top Gun, Star Trek, South Park, SpongeBob SquarePants, and your favorite CBS Sports podcasts like Pick Six, Fantasy Football Today, and of course, Fantasy Baseball Today. Scan the QR code in the top right corner if you're watching on YouTube, or head over to ParamountShop.com. Paramount Shop, where products are paramount. Bad job by me. We're about 25 minutes in here, only talking about Oneil Cruz at this point, but it was the biggest news, and again, unfortunate news from the weekend. An awkward slide at the plate. Didn't love how the White Sox catcher, Sebi Zavala, was kind of seemed like he was blocking the plate. I don't know. Oneil Cruz kind of slid late too. So I think they're both a little bit at fault. Also, why was Zavala like yelling at Oneil Cruz afterwards? It just kind of seemed unnecessary. Anywho, fractured ankle for Oneil.
Was hurt. I would assume that was the case. I don't think he was like, because the bench is cleared and the Pirates took exception to it. And like, I don't think he was like, haha, you're injured. I think he just got caught up in the moment. Let's not, I think it was okay. That's all. Uh-oh, we lost Frank. Frank was offended at my defense of Sebi Zavala. No, it was a terrible, terrible injury, and you hate to see it. And I'm sure Frank will be back and will continue taking over. But fractured ankle.
You wrote a whole article about what you should do if you lost Oneil Cruz, right?
Yeah, and first it's cry because it's very, very sad. And, the thing to keep in mind is like Oneil Cruz was actually showing some stuff in the early going. His strikeout rate was down to 21.6%. He was getting on base a ton. He wasn't hitting for the kind of power that we wanted to see, but like I think the trade-offs there we would take given his natural power. So it's frustrating, even though he hadn't been, necessarily a star yet. Mm-hmm. Fractured ankle, you're probably looking at a multi-month injury. Depends on the severity, obviously it can be a very tricky injury because you're looking at not just the fracture, but potentially ligament damage. There's a lot of stuff going on there. I know Josh Naylor back in June of 2021 missed the rest of the season with his injury. So, a worst case scenario, I think, could be well into the summer, if not a season ender. Hopefully I think
it's possible. I mean, I'm usually more optimistic than most when it comes to broken bones, but when you're talking about such a complicated joint, and the fact that they don't know if there's ligament damage yet, it's a really big blow for like, I did a survey back in March, and one of the questions was, who's the player you have to have this year? So like basically who's the most exciting player to you? And it was a tie between Corbin Carroll and Oneil Cruz. So to lose Cruz to an injury this significant so soon, it's very upsetting. And, on the subject of replacing him, like the thing is, Oneil Cruz, he was drafted at a point closer to his upside than his downside. So like you drafted Oneil Cruz expecting him to do things for you at shortstop that most other shortstops were capable of doing. So like you're probably not going to replace
what you were hoping to get from him.
The stats you were hoping to get. Exactly. Particularly with regard to power at that specific position. So that compounds the problem.
Jorge Mateo is one of the most added players at shortstop. And if you need speed, I think he's probably going to run a ton. We've talked about it. I think it's unlikely that the improvements we've seen as a hitter are going to stick in any real way, but like he might steal 45 bases this season. So that would be huge, but he might also hit 220. So as far as replacement options go, Nico Horner, 73% rostered in CBS fantasy leagues. I think if he's available in any categories leagues, I'd probably go at him, but you're not going to get a replacement for Oneil Cruz's power potential there.
I mean, that's the thing. You're trying to replace power, I would suspect. And there's just not, it's not a position, like it's a star-studded position, but most of the stars are not big power sources.
Yeah.
And ones, if you're going to make a play for one who is, you're going to pay out the nose. I mean, it's worth pointing out other shortstops we were excited about are off to really slow starts. Corey Seager, I don't think he's hit a home run yet, right? And he might be, other than Fernando Tatis, the best power threat at the position. Yeah, no home runs yet. So, you could try a buy low trade there. If that seems unrealistic, you could try a buy low trade for Carlos Correa, or even further down. I mean, like, I haven't lost faith really in Anthony Volpe or Ezequiel Tovar yet, and both have basically done nothing. So, like, if it's a shallow enough league, the person who drafted them might be close to dropping them, in which case you can offer next to nothing for them and potentially work out a deal there. It might be worth pursuing just in the name of upside. If you don't necessarily care about the shape of that upside, the shape of the production you're getting from your shortstop, you just want production. Say it's a points league, for instance. In that case, I would say Volpe especially is a good target.
Yeah, and Tovar is available in 38% of CBS fantasy leagues. He's hitting 9th, so that hasn't been great, but it's one of those things where he also hasn't hit. I think if Ezequiel Tovar starts hitting like we think he will, and remember he had, a 900 OPS and 13 homers and 17 steals in 66 games as a 20-year-old at AA last season. So there's clear potential there. I think among widely available players, he has probably as much upside as anyone. Bryce Terang is only 53% rostered in CBS fantasy leagues. That's probably the way you would end up having to go in most leagues, or I guess in 47% of leagues where you lost Oneil Cruz. But, he hit 13 homers, 35 steals at AAA last season. And I think he could be a starting caliber fantasy option. Started 6 of 9 games for the Brewers, but he's appeared in all 9. So they clearly value what he brings to the table. And then I got one upside guy who you'll have to wait for, but Royce Lewis is likely going to start a minor league rehab assignment soon, within the next couple of weeks. Likely, he's been playing simulated games at their spring training site. He was actually playing some simulated games in spring as well. Remember, he hit 313 with a 939 OPS in the majors last year. It was only like 33 games or something, but Royce Lewis, he's on the 60-day DL, so he's going to be out until towards the end of May. But if Oneil Cruz's timeline is longer than that, or like we said, the worst case scenario, Royce Lewis is someone that if you can stash, I definitely would.
All right. How do I sound? Am I good? Can you guys hear me?
All good.
Were you offended? Did Chris offend you with his
yes.
take on the slide and the response
Unbelievable.
by the catcher?
I can't believe you would say that, Chris.
Yeah. That's what we thought.
I'm so sorry.
It's all good. It's apologies on my end because just everything started going haywire, but I feel like you guys hit on it. Again, the 3 most added shortstops right now: Bryce Terang, Jorge Mateo, Orlando Arcia. Those are all rostered in less than 70% of CBS leagues. And Scott,
if you really need to scrape the bottom of the barrel because you're in a deeper league, trade's not realistic. Couple more names I'm gonna throw at you. Edmundo Sosa, who looks like he's going to be playing a lot more for the Phillies, with Tarik Hall suffering a torn ligament in his thumb. That poor guy got the opportunity of a lifetime, and it's already over, it seems like. And then the other one, Orlando Arcia. How about that? Orlando Arcia making himself relevant.
I struggle with that one because the Statcast numbers are actually pretty impressive, and I just don't buy it. And I realize that might not be fair.
Yeah.
He's only 28, and he hasn't, we haven't really seen him play regularly in his prime. He was a big prospect, got called up at 21, didn't hit that well, and then was out of a job by the time he hit his prime. So I don't know. Maybe there's something there with Orlando Arcia. I get it. It's a low probability play, but you just lost a shortstop in early April. So most of your plays are probably going to be low probability.
We didn't get an official timeline, right, on Oneil Cruz?
Nothing yet. No.
I
It's gonna be a long
researched
time.
fractured ankle. It usually heals in 6 to 8 weeks, but then he's going to have to go on a rehab assignment.
And that assumes no ligament damage or anything like that. So, yeah.
And pure speculation on my part, but yeah, I was thinking like second half of the season. Like that's probably when we're going to see Oneil Cruz again this year. Let's get into some other news and notes from the weekend. Carlos Rodon will throw a live batting practice on Monday. That will be the first time he's faced hitters since being diagnosed with that forearm strain. And there was a report that he'd be a month away from returning once he throws live BP. So I guess we're hoping for May 10th-ish for Carlos Rodon's return. Justin Verlander said Friday that he's upped his throwing intensity and expects to join the Mets well before the end of April. Okay, it's good news, but just don't rush it back. We wouldn't make sure that you're 100% by the time you get back. JV. Joe Musgrove will most likely need one more rehab start before rejoining the Padres rotation. Max Fried hasn't yet resumed mound work and is likely about 2 weeks away from returning. Dodgers manager Dave Roberts said Friday that Evan Phillips will be given more ninth inning opportunities often than the team's other relievers. So just kind of looks like Evan Phillips is the guy for now, and that's great for his fantasy value. Adam Duvall underwent x-rays on his injured left wrist after exiting Sunday's game, and he actually had another big game this weekend. He went 3 for 5, hit his 4th home run, 2 RBI, 3 runs scored, up to 90% rostered, but let's hope the news is good for Adam Duvall.
Worth noting, I believe that's the wrist he had surgery on last year or the year before, so that's not great.
No, it is not. One of the early season breakouts, too. We definitely need Adam Duvall healthy. Tyler Glasnow threw before Sunday's game and expects to throw a bullpen next week. Lars Nootbaar is traveling with the Cardinals and could be activated from the IL as early as Monday.
Latest I saw is that he won't be activated Monday.
Okay.
So I'm planning on sitting Nootbaar this week.
Fair enough. Seiya Suzuki began a rehab assignment at AAA Saturday. He could be back at some point this week. Kyle Wright said he feels great and hopes to rejoin the Braves rotation April 11th. I believe that's Tuesday. Yes. Against the Reds. Apparently his velocity was way down in his rehab start last week. Would you start him his first week back?
I'd play it safe and sit him.
Right. I think so too. Francisco Alvarez made his debut Sunday against the lefty Braxton Garrett after sitting on Friday and Saturday. We don't think this is just like a short side platoon thing, right? Because that would be terrible.
Well, Trevor Rogers started Saturday and he didn't start. And
so even less than that.
Early indications are that Tomas Nido is expected to play more, but that feels untenable.
Yeah.
That just seems like a Francisco Alvarez has to have a couple of good games and then we'll get him in there.
And like, that's like if they're not letting him bat that often, like why would you do that to him developmentally? Like unless they're just biding their time until they bring in some scrap heap catcher, which is possible. But I like Alvarez for this week because the Mets are facing 4 lefties. So even if he doesn't start all 4 of those games at catcher, I imagine he'll play a lot of DH this week.
All right. Mitch Haniger was recently shut down for about a week due to back tightness. He was originally placed on the IL with an oblique strain. Seth Brown was out of the lineup after feeling discomfort in his rib cage area. And then actually he was later placed on the IL Sunday. That is Seth Brown. Joey Gallo has missed 2 straight with right side soreness. Zach Davies left Saturday's start with a strained left oblique. And apparently Dre Jameson will step into the D-backs rotation. He had a strong relief appearance on Friday. He went 2 1/3 hitless innings with 4 strikeouts to 1 walk. And I noticed he threw his slider 51% in his first appearance, and then it's just been 23% since then. So not really sure, but I think more sliders are good for Dre Jameson.
So that was the other one who I was putting in a claim for Jameson in basically every league. So the 3 were Bubic, Desclafani, and Jameson. And of course, if Kenta Maeda was out there, Sonny Gray was out there, then they take priority. But these are guys who are available in virtually all leagues that I was looking to pick up. It seemed like in looking at the fab runs and some of the industry leagues I'm in that have already gone through, there seemed to be more enthusiasm for Jameson than either of those other 2, and I think I'd rank Jameson the lowest of the 3, just because he has so much more to prove. And I mean, even during this time he was in the bullpen, he was walking a lot of guys. I don't know. He's not a slam. It's not a slam dunk. It's more of a risk reward play with Jameson, I feel like. But certainly in 12-team leagues, you can justify a risk reward play.
Pointing out, he was a first-round pick. Disastrous in the minors, like 5.29 ERA or something. Really bad last year, especially. Yeah.
I mean, 2 really hitter-friendly venues. Same thing with Ryan Nelson. That's part of the reason why we like Brandon Pfaadt so much, because he actually pitched well at AAA. But 2 years ago, Jameson was good in the minors, and the stuff looks good.
The Yankees are hopeful Harrison Bader will play rehab games in the next 7 to 10 days, and he's 58% rostered if you're looking for speed. So Harrison Bader is out there. Garrett Whitlock is making his debut on Tuesday. He's 58% rostered and SPARP eligible for those who play in points leagues. Jared Schuster was sent back to AAA after another subpar outing. Scott, we could probably drop Jared Schuster, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Phillies top pitching prospect Andrew Painter was placed on the 60-day IL in AA because of that UCL sprain. Other names that went to the IL this weekend: Michael Harris with a lower back strain, hopes to be back when first eligible.
That's not until next Monday, though. So
yes,
make sure you don't start him this week.
Andres Munoz is dealing with a shoulder, so it looks like Paul Sewald will be the hopefully the lone Mariners closer in the meantime.
There's going to be some now I'm forgetting his name. What's his name? Who's
Matt Brash, Diego Castillo?
Diego Castillo. I was thinking Luis Castillo. No, not him. There's going to be some Diego Castillo saves for sure while Munoz is out.
Wouldn't surprise me. Travis d'Arnaud went to the 7-day IL with a concussion. Derek Hall, as we mentioned, will undergo surgery to repair a torn ligament in his right thumb. Cody Clemens will be the Phillies' regular first baseman against right-handed pitching in the meantime. Seth Brown, we mentioned that earlier. Kyle Lewis with an undisclosed illness. Pavin Smith was recalled and was actually batting third in the D-backs lineup. So if you play in deep leagues or NL only, maybe check to see if Pavin Smith is available. Jonathan Loaisiga with elbow inflammation. Austin Meadows is stepping away from baseball for now as he deals with anxiety. Akil Baddoo was recalled and put up back-to-back multi-hit games, widely available. So 4% rostered. Again, that's more of a deep league play for Baddoo. Max Kepler with right knee tendonitis. Matt Wallner was recalled. Jose Siri with a right hamstring strain. Vidal Brujan was recalled. It seems like Josh Lowe's playing time is going to be pretty safe in the meantime. And Josh Donaldson with a right hamstring strain could be back in the minimum 10 days. Dreams come true, my friends. Willie Calhoun had his contract selected by the Yankees.
Yeah, I will say there's a player I'm more interested in than Willie Calhoun.
Oh, yeah.
Matt Wallner has some interesting minor league numbers. 277 average, 27 homers in 128 games between AA and AAA last season with a bunch of walks, 412 on base percentage. So just someone to keep an eye on in deeper leagues. I have no idea how much he's going to play, but that stood out to me when I looked into him.
How many of the same player can the Twins actually put out there?
Yeah, that's fair.
Between Joey Gallo, Matt Wallner, and look, to Larnick's credit, he actually has cut down on the strikeouts this year, and he looks pretty good.
If they're all three true outcomes guys, they're going to get one of each outcome every time through the lineup.
That's
right?
9 outcomes.
There you go. Crazy stuff. Actually, the name I thought that you were going to bring up, Chris, was Franchi Cordero, who has been playing for the Yankees. And look, the Yankees have 7 games this week, all righties. He's going to play.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's always had interesting tools. He's just never had anything but interesting tools, if that makes sense.
Hey, he's hit 2 home runs so far. So again, I look, deep league play, 5 outfielder leagues. You're looking for someone this week.
Sure, yeah.
Franchi Cordero is a name for you. Let's take our final break, and then we'll get into everything else here on Fantasy Baseball Today.
Get breaking news.
Big news coming out of the NFL today.
Highlights and instant reaction.
The largest final round comeback in tour championship history. We're down to the final 4.
I just want to take time to analyze greatness.
Talk winners and losers with a guy who's already a big winner.
CBS Sports HQ. It's all sports all day long.
Pitchers that look like they are breaking out. I brought up Sonny Gray at the top of the show and mentioned a few other names here. Nick Lodolo, incredible this weekend. 7 shutout with 12 strikeouts. That's a career high for him. 15 swinging strikes on 106 pitches. Jeffrey Springs, awesome once again, going up against the Oakland A's. 7 shutout with 7 strikeouts for him. 15 swinging strikes on 89 pitches.
And you know what I can never say again about Jeffrey Springs? I can never say he hasn't gone 7 innings yet, because now he has.
Yeah. I like that. They pushed these guys a little bit more this weekend because Rasmussen also got up to 83 pitches.
Yeah, I mean, like, they pushed him. He threw 89 pitches. Like that. I'll be the lone turd in the fantasy punch bowl. here because it seems like everybody in the fantasy industry has just, we're all in on Jeffrey Springs. He's an ace now. He's like one of the best pitchers in baseball. And like, I don't know, maybe. I'm still going to say that like the Rays pitcher who has thrown 13 innings in his first 2 starts because he's been outrageously efficient, like maybe he'll just continue to pitch this well and it won't matter. But I do think innings are going to be an issue for him. I think he's going to throw fewer innings than most pitchers of his quality level, even if you think he's very, very good. So I'm going to say Jeffrey Springs is a sell high candidate. Given the amount of hype there was around him at the end of spring, given how much hype there is around him right now, I would at least be open to the idea of trading Jeffrey Springs.
I think in certain leagues, you might be able to turn Springs into Zach Gallen the way that he started the year, or Alek Manoah maybe. Is that something you would do, Chris?
Yeah, I would absolutely do that.
I don't know that I do Gallen. I do Manoah. I do like, if you could get like a Julio Urias level pitcher for Jeffrey Springs, I could go for that.
Yeah, those guys are all really good pitchers. And we think Jeffrey Springs is a really good pitcher, but we also have a lot more questions about how much he's going to throw than those guys. At least I do. Maybe I'm alone in that.
No, I mean, look, how many times did he go 6 innings last year? That was kind of,
I think it was a handful.
That was the main reason I was avoiding him, when obviously the ratios look great. And so people were talking him up as a breakout, but I just didn't have confidence that the Rays would let him work deep enough into games. And already he's gone 6 innings. He's gone 7 innings. He talked this spring about how his main goal this year was to do that, was to go deeper into games. And so my resolve there is weakening, and I regret that I don't have more of Springs. I did get him in one league late after reading that quote from him. But yeah, I mean, I'm finding that's happening with a lot of pitchers, just like Rasmussen himself. It was another example today. Just Freddie Peralta. I talked about how he went 6 innings only 4 times all of last year. Well, so far he's 2 for 2 as far as that goes. And maybe any of these guys will suffer an injury.
Well, it's not the injuries for me. It's just,
well, I know, but I'm saying
Springs threw 81 pitches in his first start. He threw at least 81 in 15 of his 25 last year. So it's not like he couldn't have thrown 6 innings last year if he was going well. He just is pitching really well right now. But I still think like a guy who's, I think at least, much more likely to throw fewer than 90 pitches than more than 90 pitches most times out. I just think there's going to be issues with innings in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say whether it's a pure pitch count thing or like the reason they were pulling Springs last year because they didn't want him to face the lineup the third time. Which, if you're going 7 innings, no matter how few pitches you're throwing, you're facing guys for the third time. So I like Rasmussen. I still have some doubts about because, he's not a big strikeout guy. And I think so far this year, we're having even more reason to be suspicious about pitchers like that. And Peralta, because there's durability questions there. Springs, I'm ready to put in the same tier as like a Zach Gallen and like a Yu Darvish and like, a Clayton Kershaw. Obviously, Kershaw's in that tier for other reasons, not performance necessarily. But like that's the range of like the preseason pitcher rankings where I'm ready to go ahead and slot Jeffrey Springs among them. Where exactly among them, I'm not sure, but that's how much he's moved up for me.
Yeah, I moved up Springs last week too. I did a rankings update on Thursday. I got Springs up to SP 26, so he's just behind.
Yeah, that's just way too high for me. I'll be the guy, I guess. I'll be the guy standing athwart Jeffrey Springs and shouting, "Let's calm down a little."
Stop.
Boo this man. Anywho, you guys already mentioned Rasmussen and Freddie Peralta. Let's get into the drop-o-meter. If we want to add all these pitchers, we need someone to drop, right? And I think I have quite a few candidates from this weekend. So we'll fire it up 1 to 10. 1 being you want to hold this player in every league. 10 being you could drop this player in any league. We'll start off with Clark Schmidt, who has a 9.45 ERA and a 2.10 whip through his first 2 starts.
9.
Yeah, 9's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Oh, this one's tough, Chris. Edward Cabrera, we know he has the skill in terms of like pure stuff. Guy is awesome, but 13 walks in his first 2 starts. What do you think?
My preference would be to not drop because I do still think there's upside there, but I can't tell you not to. So I would say 6.
Okay. Same thing with Jack Flaherty. He's only allowed 2 earned runs, but also with 13 walks so far. Scott, what do you think about him?
So I'm gonna give him and Edward Cabrera 7. Like I'm to the point where like if it has to be done, it has to be done. But I'd like to see more. Because I do think there's still a chance either one of them turns things around and pitches great. It's just like you can't trust them in your lineup right now. Yeah. So it makes for a tough predicament. I was actually prepared to drop Flaherty in one of those NFBC leagues where you don't have IL spots, so bench space is very tight. And I just didn't win any bids for any other pitcher. So I'm stuck with Flaherty still in my lineup. Sadly, that's not a great position to be in.
Mm-hmm. What about Ross Stripling? He pitched in relief Saturday. Scott, you kind of mentioned we don't really know what's going on with this situation. So I don't know how you
10.
Yep.
10. Yeah, and fine. It'd probably be a 10 even if he was still in the rotation.
Mike Clevenger kind of faked us out here, huh? 5 1/3, 4 runs allowed, 2 walks, 1 strikeout at the Pirates, just 4 swinging strikes after I think he had 15 or 16 in his first start against the Astros. Chris, what do you think about Clevenger?
I'd say it's a 7 or an 8.
Okay. Eric Lauer allowed 6 earned runs this weekend over 4 innings pitched up against the Cardinals. Scott, 1 to 10 on Lauer.
I would have no hesitation about dropping him, so I guess that's a 10.
This seems so crazy to me, but I mean, what has happened to Jose Barrios, man? This guy is just lost right now. 4 innings, 6 runs, 4 of those earned. Did have 5 strikeouts to 1 walk, but Chris, I don't know. There's something fundamentally wrong right now with Jose Barrios.
And it's the kind of thing that where there's no like obvious, his velocity's down or his spin rate is way down. Like there's no one obvious explanation for it, which makes me tend to lean towards, well, okay, he can figure it out, except that we just did this for an entire year with him and he was pretty putrid the whole season. So yeah, I think it's a 7.
All right,
if I went 7 on Flaherty, I'm going to go 5 on Barrios.
I would rather have Barrios than Flaherty, yes.
So if you're looking for reasons for encouragement, Barrios had 13 whiffs on 71 pitches, and his average exit velocity in this latest start was 88.4, which isn't amazing, but like if that's what it is for the whole season, he'll be okay.
Yeah. Scott, I'm going to give you just these 3 names here: Taijuan Walker, Carlos Carrasco, Dylan Dodd. Where do they lie?
Well, Dylan Dodd's probably a 10. I think Bryce Elder's locked up the 5th spot when everybody's healthy. I wonder if the Braves regret putting Dodd and Schuster on the 40-man. Walker and Carrasco, they're more like...
I think Carrasco's a 10. I think he's completely cooked. He's looked awful.
I'd hesitate in like the 15-team leagues where it's hard to get like a reliable takes every turn guy off the waiver wire. So I might go 9 on Walker and Carrasco, maybe 8 on Walker, 9 on Carrasco.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move into some waiver wire hitters from the weekend. James Outman hit 2 more home runs, and he started against a lefty in Madison Bumgarner on Friday. So it's giving me some confidence that hopefully he just becomes an everyday player for the Dodgers. He's looked that good so far. It was a nice weekend for Oscar Colas as well. He had 4 hits, including a home run and a steal. 63% rostered, 6 games this week, all righties. Chris, who would you rather have, James Outman or Oscar Colas?
I would rather have Colas. I think there's more upside there, but I think Outman looks really good.
Yeah, it's close for those two with me. I think Outman will probably give you more speed, maybe?
I think the biggest thing is probably just that I have more faith in Colas playing against lefties if he proves it than Outman. Mm-hmm. The Dodgers have just, like, there was a point where Gavin Lux was arguably the top hitting prospect in baseball and they weren't playing him every day. Outman's not that kind of player. So
yeah, that's
he might be better.
3 names that you could probably target in slightly deeper leagues. Maybe it's roto style lineups. Garrett Cooper had a strong weekend, 5 hits and 2 home runs. He's
in your face, Scott.
Yeah. 17% roster for Garrett Cooper. Brian De La Cruz had a big game on Sunday. He went 2 for 2 with a home run, 2 walks, and 4 RBI. And an emotional return to Pittsburgh for Andrew McCutchen. That was awesome. I don't know if you guys had the opportunity to see that, but just letting him get that ovation in Pittsburgh and returning, it was really cool moment for him. Big game on Saturday for him, 3 for 4 with a sock and a shoe. That's a home run and a steal for McCutchen. Scott, how would you rank those? Let's just say you need a utility bat or whatever it might be. Cooper, Brian De La Cruz, and Andrew McCutchen.
I will go De La Cruz, McCutchen, and Cooper. And I think De La Cruz has been playing the least of the three, but like he's the one of the three who I feel like has a next gear he could find and emerges just more than a streamer type off the waiver wire.
Cooper and McCutchen, they feel more just like high floor type players where they're not going to hurt you when you're in your lineup. So probably better for those deeper formats. But yeah, I would agree. I think De La Cruz might have more upside than those names. Some deep leaguers out there. Franchi Cordero, I mentioned him. He went 2 for 4 with his second home run on Sunday. Stone Garrett, monster game this weekend on Saturday, 4 for 5 with a home run, 2 doubles, and 5 RBI. That game did come in Coors Field. Alex Call hit a 3-run homer on Friday. He's led off 3 straight for the Washington Nationals. Kevin Kiermaier, 3 for 5 with a double, a triple, 5 RBI on Sunday. Nelson Cruz had a big game on Sunday Night Baseball. He went 3 for 4 with a home run, a double, and 6 RBI. And Geraldo Perdomo, back-to-back multi-hit games. He's off to a nice start for the Diamondbacks. Chris, anyone stand out here? We're talking, 15 teams, probably deeper than that too. Stone Garrett, Alex Call, Kiermaier, Nelson Cruz, and Perdomo.
Well, the chat, I noticed, is very excited about Geraldo Perdomo. I don't think there's very much to be excited about, but there's been a lot of Geraldo Perdomo talk in the chat today. I don't find any of these guys particularly interesting, even in my deeper leagues, but like Alex Call's minor league numbers are kind of interesting. 142 games at AAA overall, 23 homers, 12 steals. Good contact numbers. The problem is he's been very old for his levels, so I don't know how much there is there, but maybe.
He seems like a really disciplined hitter, and he got hot down the stretch after coming over from Cleveland last year. And like he is somebody, Alex Call, who I liked as a very, very deep sleeper coming in, like so deep I couldn't even get to him in 15-team leagues. But now that he's playing often and batting leadoff and walking a lot, I don't know. He's clearly my favorite of this group.
All right, let's talk about a few questionable pitchers. Starter sit these guys. Lucas Giolito was crushed by the Pirates this week. 4 innings, 12 hits, 7 earned runs. He's at the Twins. That's a sit for you, Chris.
He needs to. He's at the point where he needs to prove it, and he hasn't done it.
Chris Bassett actually was okay against the Angels, but he did walk 5 in that game. He's up against the Tigers this week. I kind of feel like we have to start that, right, Scott?
I think so. His velocity wasn't really back, but he gave up much softer contact. So it was more Chris Bassett like in that way. I don't know what was up with the walks. I do want to mention with Giolito, like a lot of the underlying stuff has looked really good. In this last start at Pittsburgh, even though the result was terrible, his velocities were actually back up to 2021 levels, because remember his velocity was down last year. And 86 mile per hour average exit velocity in that start, despite giving up 12 hits. I'd be more likely to start Giolito than Chris would, I think, with that favorable matchup. Not that it's a must by any means, but I wouldn't be as afraid of it.
And the other 2 names I wanted to mention, Jose Urquidy actually had a solid start opposite Sonny Gray, and Hunter Brown looked great at the Minnesota Twins. Urquidy at the Pirates, and Hunter Brown versus the Rangers. You all right with those, Chris?
Yeah, I think both of them are fine starters, both this week and generally moving forward. I think Brown, I think he's going to have ups and downs for sure. I think the control is going to be a recurring issue for him, but when he's controlling his pitch as well, I think he's going to be really good. It's going to be, I think, a frustrating ride.
Other pitching standouts, I've got a group of 4 here. Stroman, Alex Cobb, Brandon Woodruff, Patrick Sandoval, all looked pretty good this weekend. Scott, any thoughts on those names? Stroman, Cobb, Woodruff, Sandoval.
Well, I'm a little frustrated with Sandoval because he has 3 strikeouts this year. The starts have been pretty good in terms of limiting damage, yeah, just 4 strikeouts in 11 innings, and underwhelmed with the strikeouts last year. He had more than 1 per inning, but for a guy who gets a ton of whiffs on the changeup and the slider, like he's looking less and less like a strikeout pitcher. So that's frustrating.
The one thing is the whiff rates on the changeup and slider are both decent still, 30% on both. And the fastball's not getting hit hard yet. I stress yet because of his track record, but if that's a thing moving forward, I think that's interesting. But yeah, the changeup hasn't been as good as hoped for. He's actually given up a lot of hard contact with the changeup so far, which is not usually what we're used to seeing from him. So I'm confident that that'll be better moving forward. But yeah, it's been a frustrating start for sure.
4 other names. Joe Ryan had 10 strikeouts against the Astros. He did give up a grand slam to Yordan Alvarez. Kodai Senga pitched well once again. Jordan Montgomery was awesome at the Brewers. And George Kirby bounced back at the Guardians. Chris, any thoughts here? Ryan, Senga, Montgomery, and Kirby.
Ryan looks really good. I think Kodai Senga is going to be really, really good. I think that's one that they're again like Hunter Brown. There's probably going to be some control issues at times, but I think he's going to be very good. Yeah,
that ghost forkball so far, a .071 batting average against and a 60% whiff rate.
Yeah.
He didn't actually throw it in this start much against the Marlins.
Sure,
which is interesting. He threw it more in his first start.
I wonder if it's something, and I've heard the Mets broadcast talk about this, where the more times a certain lineup sees Senga, they start to pick up things on that forkball, and maybe they don't swing at it as much, and maybe that's why he didn't throw it.
This was the second time in a row against the Marlins.
Yeah, it was the second time facing the Marlins, so something interesting, and we're thinking about maybe, if he has a great first half, and maybe we're looking to sell high on Kodai Senga going into the second half of the season. There were awesome hitting standouts this weekend as well, but I think just quickly talk about Brian Reynolds. He is off to this insane start. He went 3 for 5 with a home run, 6 RBI on Friday, and he is now up to 5 homers, 2 steals, 14 RBI overall. And we're getting questions whether or not to sell high on Brian Reynolds right now. What do you guys think?
I don't know. I mean, we've seen him do obviously this pace is unsustainable. He's the best hitter in baseball. We haven't seen him do that, but we've seen him be a stud, like a no questions asked stud among outfielders twice already. Like just every odd year, Brian Reynolds is amazing. So I don't know that I'd be that eager to sell high. It ultimately comes down to who you can get for him.
Yes.
Like you can open my outfield rankings and more or less see who I'd trade Brian Reynolds for. Might need to update them a little bit, but if you could get like Kyle Schwarber for him, obviously I'm going to do that. But just like, I don't believe in Brian Reynolds, so I might as well shop him while his value is high. And like just in a general sense, I don't feel that way. I think there's a good chance he has a really good season.
I think an out of position trade you could try for right now, just classic buy low, sell high, is give up Brian Reynolds to get Corey Seager. Something I would try to do.
I would do that.
Yep.
Sure.
Especially
if you just lost Oneil Cruz. My goodness.
I mean, why would you have 2 Pirates on the same team? But I guess weirder things have happened. Let's get into some bullpen updates here. We'll wrap up with this and some streamers. For the Cubs this weekend, Michael Fulmer threw 2 shutout innings with 4 strikeouts, picked up his first save, and he's 49% rostered. So if you need saves or just a reliever, I think you could go out and add Michael Fulmer. For the Phillies on Friday, Craig Kimbrell gave up a hit and walk, but picked up his first save. And then on Sunday, Kimbrell pitched in the 8th with a 2-run lead. He gave up a run. Then Sir Anthony Dominguez came in for the 9th, 1-run game. He gave up 3 earned runs, took the blown save and the loss. And I did see some speculation, some bids out there in deeper leagues on Jose Alvarado. Would you guys be looking to speculate there if you need saves in a deep league?
I added him in one. Yeah, it wasn't a fab league, so it didn't cost me anything, but I took a flyer just to see.
We finally got some saves for the Royals on Friday. Aroldis Chapman got the 8th inning to face 9-1-2 in the Giants lineup. That came with a 3-1 lead. Then Scott Barlow pitched in the 9th for his first save. And then on Saturday, Barlow was unavailable because he pitched the previous 2 days in a row. And Chapman struck out 2 for his first save. I think it's Scott Barlow for now, but maybe it's like a 60-40 or 70-30.
Well, I mean, he worked 2 days in a row. We saw that from for a lot of closers over the weekend. They'd worked Alexis Diaz today had worked the previous. He hadn't worked the previous 2 days. He just threw a bunch of pitches on Saturday in a really ugly outing. So somebody else, some no name, got to save for the Reds. But my point is, like, it's a normal thing, especially this early in the season, to not have a closer work 3 days in a row. And so I wouldn't read too much into that Chapman save. Of course, it is possible, especially as good as he looks right now, that he could make it more of a timeshare. But I don't think that's where we're at right now.
For the Nationals on Friday, Kyle Finnegan pitched in the 9th inning with a 5-run lead. And then on Saturday, he pitched in the 8th, also with a 5-run lead. Anthony Banda came in for the 9th and he gave up 3 runs. And then Carl Edwards closed out the game and he got the save. So I think it's still Finnegan, but he was really bad in one outing last week. So something to pay attention to. For the Diamondbacks on Friday, Andrew Chafin got the final 2 outs in a 6-3 win. And then on Saturday, Scott McGough recorded 4 outs across the 7th and the 8th innings, and he gave up a solo home run. I was pretty confident in Scott McGough coming into the year. Now I feel like we're back to square one. I have no idea with the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, my dark horse there is Miguel Castro. If I just have a spot to play with in a deep league that, where saves are always in high demand off the waiver wire, I'm trying to stash away Miguel Castro because I think he might get a chance soon.
All right. On Saturday for the Twins, Jorge Lopez struck out the side in the 7th with a 1-run lead. Yohan Duran would later record the final out for his 2nd save of the year. For the Mariners, Paul Sewald allowed 2 base runners but picked up his 2nd save. For the Angels on Saturday, Jose Quijada pitched in the 8th with a 2-run lead at the time. Carlos Estevez pitched in the 9th. The problem, it was a 4-run lead, so no save for Estevez. And then I believe it was on Sunday, Estevez did not look very good. He came on in extra innings. He gave up 2 runs, and he took the loss in that game. So I think it's Estevez, but I don't know. Let's watch this Quijada guy. It seems like they kind of like him. For the Tigers on Sunday, Alex Lang pitched in the 7th, down 2-1 at the time. He gave up a run. And then for the Rockies, Pierce Johnson walked 1, but converted his 3rd save, and he's looked pretty good so far. So 34% rostered if you need saves. Pierce Johnson widely available. The regulars for the bullpens this weekend, Felix Bautista picked up his 3rd save. Josh Hader picked up his 2nd. Jordan Romano picked up his 4th on Friday. And then he gave up 3 runs on Sunday, took the blown save, wound up with the win. For the Yankees, Clay Holmes picked up 2 saves this weekend. For the Giants, Camilo Doval entered the game tied in the 9th. He gave up a run, took the loss on Saturday. And then Sunday, Doval was unavailable. Tyler Rogers converted the save. That's Tyler, not Taylor, though. I really don't have a lot of confidence in Doval, but if something happens, it's going to be one of the Rogers.
There was one. Worked 2 days in a row, so he wasn't available today. That was Camilo Doval.
Yeah. For the Mets on Saturday, David Robertson struck out 1 for his 2nd save. Josh Hader got his 3rd save on Saturday as well. For the Red Sox on Sunday, Kenley Jansen picked up his 2nd save. And then for the Pirates, David Bednar struck out 2 for his 4th save. Let's do to stream or not to stream. We'll start with Monday. Domingo Germán at the Guardians.
No, thanks.
Kenta Maeda versus the White Sox.
Sure.
Kyle Gibson versus the A's.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Rowanzi Contreras versus the Astros.
Nope.
Matt Strahm versus the Marlins.
Nah.
Bryce Elder versus the Reds.
No, probably not.
Drew Smiley versus the Mariners.
No to that one. I'm still thinking about Elder versus the Reds because I have him pretty high on the sleeper pitchers list for this week. He's making 2 starts if we're looking at weekly rather than daily.
Yeah. I kind of like it. I think I could get down with Bryce Elder. Zach Greinke at the Rangers.
I don't think so.
I'm starting him in a few leagues.
He's another 2-star guy.
Yeah, 2 starts.
Yeah, I picked him up in TGFBI. It's 15-team league, so just kind of desperate for pitching there. Andrew Heaney versus the Royals.
This is the ultimate test of how much you like playing the matchups because it's a great matchup. Couldn't ask for a much better matchup the way the start of this year has gone, but boy, Heaney just got crushed.
His slider didn't look right in that first start. The movement profile was weird. I think the velocity was down a couple miles per hour, so He's definitely still working on some stuff.
I think it's a no for me.
Yeah.
Jose Suarez versus the Nationals.
I'm just not going to commit. No.
Wade Miley at the D-backs.
I wouldn't.
Nah.
On Tuesday, Hunter Gaddis versus the Yankees.
No.
Kyle Muller at the Orioles.
No.
Mitch Keller versus the Astros.
I kind of like him for 2 starts. Neither of the matchups individually is great, though. So probably pass in a stream day-to-time scenario.
David Peterson versus the Padres.
No.
Chris Flexen at the Cubs.
No.
Hayden Wesneski versus the Mariners.
I might do that.
Maybe, yeah.
Josiah Gray at the Angels.
He was actually good at Coors Field, but I always struggle. Even when pitchers are good at Coors Field, I struggle with it because Coors Field is so weird that, like, I don't know if you can actually learn anything from it. I would say no, given the matchup, but I did add him in one league.
I agree. Alex Wood, revenge game versus the Dodgers.
Nope.
Nah.
All right, we're going to wrap there for Scott and Chris. I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. We'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.